So just a reminder, energy in life is all about cellular respiration and photosynthesis. ATP is going to supply all the energy we need for life. ATP is created using glucose, and an organism can get glucose from its food or from photosynthesis. So we've already talked about this process of creating ATP using glucose. So now we want to talk about how some organisms can actually make their own glucose. Photosynthesis. Capturing sunlight energy to build glucose from carbon dioxide and water. Again, we've got some Latin roots if you just look at the name. Photo means light, synth together, sys process. We've got a process of light bringing something together. In this case, we're going to convert different forms of energy. A while ago, we talked about potential energy and kinetic energy, and that energy had different forms. So we're going to convert a form of energy from light energy into chemical bond energy. Just like cellular respiration, we've got a summary equation. Carbon dioxide plus water plus sunlight in the presence of pigments called chlorophyll will build us glucose and give us a waste product of oxygen. This process is going to happen in 2 steps, and both of those steps are going to occur in the chloroplasts. First, we have the light-dependent reactions, and as you can imagine, light-dependent means it requires light to happen. The first step, sunlight, is going to excite a pigment molecule electron. The excited electrons are going to provide the energy to pull a water molecule apart. They're going to pull a hydrogen off, an electron off, and what's going to be left over if you do that with a couple water molecules is oxygen. This is going to build a small amount of ATP via ATP synthase, and it's also going to build NADPH from NADP+ through an electron transport chain. So this should sound a little bit familiar. We're moving hydrogens and electrons around, and we're using that to build ATP, and we're using an electron transport chain. This sounds a little bit like oxidative phosphorylation. If we look at this picture, we can see the different parts. So the light is going to come in, and it's going to activate these pigment molecules. As each pigment molecule gets activated, it's going to contribute more and more energy until this particular pigment molecule has enough built-up energy to rip apart a water, grab electrons from it, and in the remaining parts of the water, you're going to have hydrogens. They're going to get pumped through ATP synthase to make a little bit of ATP. And the oxygen that's left over is going to be a waste product that's going to be given off by the plant. The electrons are going to go through an electron transport chain and a separate photosystem to build NADPH. This is just like NADH. It's a taxicab. The P means there's a phosphate in there. It's just a different kind of taxicab. So if we look at the inputs of photosynthesis, we're putting in light and we're putting in water. What we're getting out of it is oxygen gas, ATP, and NADPH. Notice at this point we haven't gotten CO2 involved. We haven't made glucose yet. We've just got NADPH, ATP, and some oxygen. If you take away the light, you take away the ability to pull apart waters, and so this whole system shuts down. Note that this is happening in the chloroplasts, and all of these proteins that are running this electron transport chain, the photosystems that are holding the pigments, all of this is embedded in the membrane of the thylakoids. These are the little stacks that you find inside the chloroplast. This is what's going to hold the pigments. You have to have these pigments. If you don't have these pigments, this process isn't going to work. Next, we have the light-independent reactions, also known as the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle is going to use carbon dioxide, ATP, and NADPH. NADPH and ATP, those are just going to come from the light-dependent reactions, what we just did. CO2, this is new. This is going to come from outside the plant cell. It's going to open up pores and allow that CO2 to come in. It's going to take those CO2s, the ATPs and NADPHs, and run them through a cycle of reactions. And as it runs through that cycle of reactions, it's going to build glucose by building something called G3P. You don't need to know the specific names of this, but it's glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. And it's a 3-carbon molecule that comes out of the Calvin cycle. So we have CO2 going in, ATP going in, NADPH going in, and then we get G3P out. If you take 2 G3Ps and put them together, you have glucose. So when we say the Calvin cycle and photosynthesis makes glucose, what we're saying is it makes G3P, you put those two together and you're going to get glucose. Now the reason I didn't say we just get glucose is we can build other things from G3P. If we make polymers of it, we can make long chains. We can end up with different kinds of complex carbohydrates. We can also use G3P to make fats. If we add some nitrogens in there, we can even build proteins from G3P. So if you think about a plant doesn't need to eat at all. From this entire process, making G3P, a plant can make its glucose, which can then be used in its mitochondria to make energy. But a plant can also use the outputs of photosynthesis to make its carbohydrates, its fats, and its proteins. So now you can see why a plant is so self-sufficient based on photosynthesis. If we add G3P with nitrogen and phosphorus, we can build DNA and RNA. This step does not require sunlight, so it can be done at the same time as the light-dependent reactions, or it can be what occurs at nighttime. So I'd like you to go through the same review steps that we did before. So take a minute, make 2 circles for each step, identify where each step of photosynthesis occurs, indicate what the inputs and outputs are, and try and extract the summary equation from your graphic.